Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the dense, necessary, and sometimes, let's be honest, overwhelming material you need to master, and we break it all down.
We're here to give you the insights that really stick.
Exactly. We are not here to read the textbook to you. We're here to interpret it, to clarify the connections, and hopefully turn it into knowledge you can actually use in your day-to-day.
And today, we are opening up Chapter 13 of Baily and Love's 28th edition. It's a big one, focusing entirely on surgical audit and research.
Right, and our mission today is very, very clear. This is an interpretation. It's a clarification.
Think of this as your high-yield study session, maybe a ready reckoner or a revision tool to use after you've read the chapter.
We want to give you the context, those connections, and the memorable anchors that help these concepts stick when it really, really counts.
So if you're a surgical trainee or a medical student, this is your blueprint for navigating what can feel like an incredibly complex landscape.
It really can.
Absolutely. And the foundational concept here, right from the source material, is that a surgeon is inherently an innovator. By definition, surgery is never static.
It's always evolving.
It's always evolving. It involves constantly adapting, tweaking, and improving techniques, tools, patient pathways, everything.
And because of that constant evolution, the core responsibility is clear, isn't it? It's on all surgeons to critically evaluate their own performance.
Yes. And the impact of every new device, every new technique or treatment pathway on the outcomes for their patients, if you change something, you have to measure the result.
They have to.
And that measurement and evaluation, whether it's through audit or formal research, it isn't just an optional extracurricular.
No, it's central.
The text explicitly calls it the stable cornerstone for a long and successful surgical career. It's the engine of continuous improvement.
That's a very high bar. And what this chapter really drills down into is developing those critical appraisal skills.
Right. You need to be able to evaluate that flood of papers coming out every single year, many of which, frankly, are poorly designed or flawed.
And the argument here is that the single best way to develop that critical understanding of other people's work is what?
To perform quality studies of your own. You learn the pitfalls by falling into them yourself.
That makes a lot of sense.
And here's the hardest part, something every clinician scientist knows, and it's worth stating right up front. The hardest part of any audit or research project is not collecting the data.
It's writing it up.
It's writing it up. And the second hardest thing is writing that very first article and actually getting it accepted.
So this deep dive, our aim is to give you that blueprint, the structure, the insight, so that when you hit that final writing hurdle, you are prepared and confident.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately and establish the fundamental anchor. Before you write a single line of a protocol, before you collect one piece of data, you have to answer the big question.
Is this audit or is this research?
Yes. And this distinction is completely non-negotiable. It determines your entire framework, your approvals, and ultimately whether your results are generalizable or just local.
That decision dictates which regulatory hoops you're going to have to jump through. You either go to your local, often simpler audit department, or you enter the much more rigorous regulatory system, something like the Health Research Authority, or HRA in the UK.
So the source material uses the HRA decision tool as the key framework here, and it's built around three overarching defining questions.
That's right. If you can answer yes to any one of these three, you are almost certainly doing research.
Let's look at those three HRA anchors, starting with the most clear-cut one.
Question 1 is very straightforward. Are participants randomized to different groups?
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means if you are purposefully allocating patients to an existing standard treatment, let's say Group A, versus a new or modified intervention, Group B, based on some chance mechanism.
Like a coin flip or a computer program.
Exactly. That's research. That is, by definition, an experimental design.
Okay, makes sense. Question 2. Does the protocol demand changing treatment, care, or services from accepted standards for any of the patients involved?
This is critical. If you're introducing a completely new surgical technique that isn't standard practice, or you're using a drug outside of its licensed indication.
Or adding a new test that maybe has a risk.
Yes, or adding a new diagnostic test that exposes the patient to an extra risk, even if it's small, that is research. Audit, by its very definition, measures against existing accepted standards.
While research introduces new standards for evaluation.
Precisely.
And then there's the third question, and this is the one that really seems to trip people up. It's about impact. Is your study designed to produce generalizable or transferable findings?
Yes, this is where good intentions can lead to a lot of regulatory confusion.
Because you might think your findings are really important and should be shared widely.
Exactly. But generalizable has a very specific meaning here. The HRA clarifies that generalizability means the findings can be reliably extrapolated from your study to a broader population of patients or applied reliably to other hospitals or other contexts.
So if I run a project that finds my hospital's specific post-op protocol reduces readmission rates, that's great for my hospital.
It is, yeah.
But I can't immediately say every other hospital in the country has to adopt it.
Precisely. Most local audits, while they are profoundly valuable for local quality control, they are hypothesis generating.
So they raise a question.
They find a problem or they demonstrate a local success, but they don't provide the new definitive evidence that can fundamentally change national practice without subsequent, often much larger prospective testing.
So if your local success can't be reliably extrapolated without that further testing, like a full randomized controlled trial,
then you are operating in the audit or service evaluation domain, not formal research.
And you mentioned the related term transferable.
Yes, that's usually applied to qualitative studies. These findings aren't statistically generalizable in the way, say, a large RCT's numerical data is.
So what does transferable mean then?
Transferable means the findings, maybe detailed patient narratives about their experience with a chronic condition, can be assumed to be applicable to a similar context or setting.
I see. So if you study the impact of stoma formation on quality of life in one city.
Right. The emotional and psychosocial findings are highly likely to be transferable to similar patients in a different city, even if the quantitative outcome data might vary a little bit between the institutions.
This classification is so essential. And the source material stresses that the framework is built on minimal risk, burden, or intrusion.
Yes. Audit should carry minimal risk, as it's just measuring standard practice. Research, by introducing novelty or changing care, carries an inherent increase in risk or burden, which is what triggers the need for that full ethical and regulatory review.
Okay, let's do a quick check-in question for you, the listener. Imagine you're working in a hospital, and you notice that your current rate of surgical site infections, SSIs, is higher than the established national guideline. Let's say it's 15% versus the national 10%.
And you decide to implement a new, highly structured, national standardized protocol for prophylactic antibiotic administration, which is already accepted practice elsewhere, to see if your rate drops.
So is that project classified as audit, or is it research, according to those 3 HRA questions?
Take a moment to think about that distinction. Are you generating new evidence or ensuring compliance with existing standards?
Okay, the answer is...
It's almost certainly audit or service evaluation.
Why is that?
Well, you're not randomizing patients to different treatments, so that's question 1 out. You're not changing the treatment from accepted standards. You're just adopting an established standard of care that your hospital was failing to meet.
So that's question 2 out.
Exactly. And your primary goal is local quality improvement to meet that 10% target, not generating new generalizable knowledge. So that's question 3.
Got it. So if you got that, you've got the foundational difference anchored.
And if you missed it, remember this. Audit measures compliance. Research seeks to change the standard.
So if we've decided we're doing an audit, let's drill down into the necessary structure. Audit is fundamental to being a responsible clinician.
It is. It's the process we use to improve patient care by comparing all aspects of that care, the structure, the process, the outcome, against explicit criteria and defined standards.
It's the engine of continuous quality assurance.
And in the UK specifically, contributing to clinical databases and rigorously tracking your personal outcome data against national standards is an essential component of the revalidation process for every single surgeon.
So if your care falls short of the guidance standard?
Then professional change must be proposed and documented. Simple as that.
And the change that an audit can precipitate can happen on multiple scales, which is an interesting point.
Yeah, it could be really granular. An individual surgeon needing new training or new equipment.
Or it could be a team-level change, like implementing a new surgical safety checklist.
Or bigger still, an institutional change, like a new local antibiotic policy or creating a regional tertiary referral center.
And sometimes local audits can reveal such profound systemic issues that they actually spur national change.
Like new screening programs, for example.
Exactly.
The key is that audit must be a formal, iterative process. We can use the metaphor of a workflow diagram, the 7-step audit cycle, which ensures that improvement is systematically achieved, documented, and crucially maintained.
Okay, let's walk through that workflow. Step 1.
Define the audit question and the population, and ideally do this within a multidisciplinary team.
Get everyone on board from the start. Nurses, anesthetists, surgeons.
Yep. That ensures the data you collect is actually relevant to the whole team.
Step 2.
Identify the body of evidence and current standards. You aren't inventing the standard you aim to meet. You're finding the agreed-upon criteria.
Like a nice guideline or a Royal College document.
Exactly. The standard that you must comply with.
Step 3. Design the audit.
So you define your methodology for measuring performance against those standards. This needs institutional agreement and advice from local audit departments to ensure confidentiality and feasibility.
Step 4 is measuring performance over an agreed interval. This is the data collection phase.
And you must capture enough patients to make the results meaningful.
Step 5. Analyze the results and compare performance against your standard. Did you meet the bar or fall short?
And then step 6 is the critical decision point, the gap analysis.
This determines the path forward.
Right. If you met all the standards, fantastic. You document compliance and you decide to re-audit later to ensure that compliance is maintained.
But if improvement is needed,
you identify and agree on specific measurable interventions. This might be mandatory training, changing equipment, or revamping an entire patient pathway.
And then step 7, which I imagine is often forgotten, but it's the most crucial part of the cycle.
It is. Re-audit. You have to go back and confirm that the intervention you implemented in step 6 actually worked and closed the gap.
Because without step 7, it's just a snapshot project that gathered dust.
Exactly. Not a quality improvement cycle.
Now, here's where the source material highlights something that's really relevant for junior staff, a kind of revolution in this area.
Yes, the emergence of the multi-center snapshot audit.
These have gained significant traction in surgery because they solve one of the major problems of traditional audit, which is scale and time. So what makes them so powerful?
Well, they involve many collaborators across multiple hospitals. They prospectively collate data, and they only run for a short, intense period, typically 6 to 8 weeks.
So they're massive, rapid snapshots of real-world practice, a short window of prospective data collection across a huge cohort. Why does that beat the single-center approach?
A local audit might take a year to collect 50 cases, and its findings are limited to that one institution. A multi-center snapshot collects 500 cases in 6 weeks. It instantly provides a huge, diverse data set that allows you to explore practice variability.
You mean how surgeons in different hospitals manage the same condition?
Exactly, or what specific techniques they're using. And this variability often reveals apparent differences in outcomes, which generates the hypotheses that you then take forward to a formal funded research project.
So it's the ultimate hypothesis generator that leverages collaboration to get around the constraints of local compliance requirements.
Precisely. And the practical benefits are huge, especially for students and junior trainees. They're easily accessible, can be done at almost zero cost because everyone's contributing existing data.
And they're a great way to start collaborating and generating real-world data quickly without needing complex ethical approvals.
Because they are defined as audit.
Okay, let's run through that quick fictional case study again to really nail down this audit concept. So, the scenario. A surgical trainee notices high rates of catheter-associated urinary tract infections, CIUTI, on their general surgical ward.
They look up the national standard and see their rate is exceeding it by 5%.
So they define the question, that's step 1. They identify the national standard, step 2. They design the measurement method, step 3. Measure the rates, step 4. And find a major gap, step 5.
And they propose an intervention, step 6B. Mandatory, immediate training for all nurses and junior doctors on the ward regarding aseptic technique for catheter insertion, and they also standardize the catheter pack used.
That's a good multi-pronged intervention.
Yeah.
So what is the crucial final step of the audit cycle for this trainee that turns this project into genuine quality improvement?
It has to be step 7. Re-audit.
Has to be.
They must measure the CAUTI rate again, maybe 3 or 6 months after the training has been implemented, to confirm that the interventions were successful in bringing the rates back down into compliance with the national standard.
And if it didn't work?
The cycle starts again. You define a new question based on the failure of that first intervention.
So the key takeaway here, audit is about ensuring compliance with existing standards to improve local care.
And the multi-center snapshot audit is the modern tool that bridges that local observation with global hypothesis generation.
If audit confirms we're meeting the bar, Our next job is raising it.
Which brings us to research. This is all about leaving existing standards behind to generate entirely new knowledge, often by testing a novel treatment or regimen against the current gold standard.
And this is where refining the hypothesis is just paramount. The source material says spending time refining the question is probably the single most important part of the entire process.
Because the time cost of research is enormous. The worst outcome is finding out after months of work and expense that the research has already been done.
Or that your methodology was just fundamentally flawed from the start.
It's the foundational blueprint. Your question has to be novel, relevant, and answerable.
So where do you begin your search for a worthwhile question that hasn't already been done?
First port of call, naturally, is consulting the literature. The medical librarian is truly your friend here. They are experts in search methodology.
And you need to start with an accurate and efficient search using structured search terms. You're looking for current articles, and review articles and meta-analyses can be particularly helpful.
They are, because they synthesize existing data and often flag areas of uncertainty.
And this search skill is essential. The chapter gives a crucial warning that is often overlooked by junior researchers. It is not enough to just read the abstract.
No, you have to carefully peruse the full text to understand the methodology, the limitations, the potential conflicts of interest, and the inherent pitfalls of the study design.
And you have to leverage gold standard collections like the Cochrane collaboration.
Absolutely. It's a global independent network dedicated to preparing and promoting accessible, evidence-based medical information that is free from commercial conflict of interest. If Cochrane has already done a systematic review on your topic, you need to understand why their conclusion is still uncertain.
Now, let's talk about finding the gaps. The research treasure maps, as the source calls them. You don't have to invent a question out of thin air.
No, the most important gaps are often formally defined for you by national bodies. The first excellent source of ideas is reviewing high-quality national guidelines, like those from the UK National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, or NICE.
And why are NICE guidelines such a rich treasure trove for researchers?
Because they often contain a specific section called Recommendations for Research. And this section is populated by panels of national experts who have reviewed all the currently available evidence for a particular intervention and found a significant lack of high-quality data.
So they might say, we recommend treatment X, but there isn't enough evidence to determine its long-term cost-effectiveness compared to treatment Y.
And that is essentially a national mandate for research. If you design a project to cover one of these agreed areas, it's easily justifiable to both funders and clinicians. It instantly demonstrates the clinical need and potential impact.
Which is half the battle in securing funding. So this is the second treasure map.
The second are priority setting partnerships, or PSPs. Groups like the James Lind Alliance run these, often with surgical associations and their patient partner groups.
And what do they do?
These partnerships follow a structured process to bring together patients, carers, healthcare professionals, and organizations to formally identify and prioritize research gaps that matter most to those affected by the condition.
So this ensures the research aligns with patient priorities, not just academic curiosity.
Correct. For instance, a surgeon might prioritize the technical efficacy of a new implant, but patients might prioritize the psychological impact of recovery or long-term pain management.
So by aligning your study with a PSP priority, it's much more likely to be well-received and potentially funded.
Highly likely. And finally, for anyone starting out, especially in the UK, the source mentions the vital support networks available. Research is not a solo sport.
You shouldn't do it alone.
No. The National Institute for Health Research, the NIHR, runs the Research Design Service, or RDS, which provides free and confidential advice on research design, methodology, stats, funding applications, public engagement.
So use these resources.
Use them. Navigating that initial design phase, refining the question, and ensuring the methodology is sound is too important to do alone.
If refining the question is the most important start, the source identifies the most common reason for a good project failing to reach completion.
And that's the failure to involve others.
The failure to collaborate.
That's right. Only the smallest, most localized, single-center project can truly be delivered by an individual researcher working alone. And even those are often better done collaboratively.
So the collaborative model provides three essential things. First, the necessary skills and experience that no one person has.
You need statisticians, methodologists, clinicians.
Second, a broader resource pool, which is critical when you look at the sample sizes needed. We'll get to that. And third, and maybe most importantly, momentum.
Momentum is absolutely key because clinical life is chaotic.
It is.
Clinicians are busy, they're dealing with exams, family life, busy clinical periods, rotations. By having a critical mass of engaged members spread across multiple units, the collective momentum ensures the project keeps pushing through to completion.
Even if individual contributors have to step back for a bit.
Exactly. And the trainees themselves led a revolution in this area to solve the problem of rotation-induced project death.
Okay, let's look at that history because it's truly inspirational. The first trainee-level research collaborative in the UK was formed in 2008.
The West Midlands Research Collaborative, or WMRC, they were trainees who were just frustrated by the challenges of conducting high-quality research while managing full-time training.
And their premise was brilliant in its simplicity.
It was. Create prospective research projects that collate data across all their units simultaneously, and then leverage the natural rotation of trainees between those units to ensure the project has longevity.
So the trainees move, but the data collection network stays in place.
That's it. And the WMRC's first simple randomized controlled trial, the Rossini trial, became the galvanized example for this model.
What exactly did the Rossini trial test, and why was it the perfect project to prove this model?
It explored the clinical effectiveness of a simple plastic wound edge protection device, a wound protector ring, to reduce surgical site infections after abdominal surgery.
So simple, pragmatic, inexpensive, easy to standardize.
And it answered a question relevant to almost every general surgeon.
And the result was stunning. It really proved the power of collaboration.
This network of trainees mobilized 21 units. They randomized 760 patients over 23 months and completed the trial 2.5 months ahead of schedule.
Wow.
It demonstrated that high-quality, large-scale RCTs, traditionally reserved for big academic centers, could be effectively delivered by trainee collaboratives working together.
And the model just exploded from there.
It exploded globally. There are now general surgical research collaboratives in every UK region, national collaboratives for subspecialties.
And it spread globally to Australia, Portugal, Canada.
All over. And in the UK alone, these trainee collaboratives have since developed at least 10 RCTs and secured competitive grant funding worth over £8 million. It's completely transformed the landscape.
And it's not just surgery anymore. The model has extended to medical students, the StarCert group.
And into non-surgical specialties like anesthetics and elderly care, realizing that distributed, multi-site data collection is the only way to rapidly achieve the sample sizes needed.
And the principle governing all these groups is complete inclusivity.
Right. Anyone from a medical student who just started shadowing to a consultant with 30 years of experience is welcome to join at any stage.
So if you're a surgical learner, the advice is clear.
Seek out your local or national surgical research collaborative group and get involved immediately. It's one of the most practical and high-yield pieces of advice this chapter offers you.
So you have your refined question and you've built your collaborative team. Now comes the actual design, laying out the steps to answer the question without bias.
Right. And before laying out the methodology, the chapter insists you ask a series of vital pre-study questions, which are summarized in Summary Box 13.1.
And these questions function as a necessary filter, saving you months of wasted effort.
They do. Why are you doing this study? Will it answer a useful question with clinical relevance? Is it practical with the resources and time available?
Does it genuinely benefit from collaboration? What are the expected findings?
And perhaps most importantly, what are the research governance, the ethical issues, and the potential impact?
Time spent answering these questions honestly is never wasted.
Never. It prevents you from committing to a fundamentally flawed project that can't be completed or published.
When we talk about types of study, we have to acknowledge the hierarchy of evidence, that pyramid with the systematic review on top.
And the randomized controlled trial, the RCT, is widely regarded as one of the best methods for testing drugs or established procedures. It's the gold standard because randomization inherently minimizes selection bias.
But the source material reminds us that many surgical advances come from other types of study, particularly when you're dealing with innovation.
Yes, new types of operation often require a different path. And that path is formalized by groups like the Ideal Collaborators.
And what do they recommend?
They suggest a structured pathway. Start with a pilot study to assess feasibility and safety, move into development and refinement, and then attempt a formal RCT once the technique is established and safe.
Which makes sense. You can't ethically randomize patients to an established operation versus an unproven, potentially dangerous new one.
Exactly.
So let's quickly define the main types of studies listed in the source material for context.
Sure, observational studies evaluate a condition or treatment without the researcher interfering. They can be retrospective, looking backwards at existing data.
Or prospective, collecting new data moving forward in time. Perspective is generally better.
Right.
Generally superior, yes, as the data collection can be standardized. Then you have case control studies, which compare patients with the disease against carefully matched controls without that disease.
What about cross-sectional studies?
They take measurements at a single occasion on a small, selected similar group, and then try to extrapolate those results,
And longitudinal studies take measurements over a long period of time.
which is essential for chronic disease and surgical outcomes. And finally, you have experimental studies where the researcher controls the allocation to treatment groups. The RCT is the gold standard type of experimental study.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Research can be quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative research aims for hard facts, objective endpoints that can be measured numerically.
Absolutely. Think quantifiable outcomes like death, reoperation rate, length of stay, or major complications.
And these complications have to be standardized.
They must be classified using universally accepted systems, like the Clavian-Dindo system, which grades surgical complications from minor grade 1st to death grade V.
But the patient experience is equally crucial, especially in modern surgery. Qualitative research focuses on patient narratives and the psychosocial impact of disease and treatment.
And that data is often collected using validated quality of life questionnaires. The modern focus, and what the source stresses, is the crucial role of patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs.
So this reflects the patient's perspective on pain, mobility, fear, function.
All of it. It's now an essential component of evaluating almost any surgical procedure. It's no longer enough to say the patient survived. You have to document their quality of life.
So the best research really manages to be both quantitative and qualitative.
It has to be, to acknowledge that surgical success is both technical and functional.
Okay, let's check in on this dual focus. If you were researching the long-term experience of having limb amputation surgery, would you focus purely on the objective endpoints, say the Clavian-Dindo complications? Or would a qualitative approach using PROMs be more appropriate?
Think about what the surgeon needs to report versus what the patient truly experiences.
Right.
Well, while the Clavian-Dindo score is vital for objective medical reporting, you need those hard facts about complication rates. The qualitative approach using PROMs is absolutely essential.
To capture the true psychosocial impact.
And functional recovery and quality of life post-surgery. Purely quantitative data might show low mortality, but the PROMs might reveal profound psychological distress and functional limitations.
So you need both to truly assess the value of the surgery to that patient.
You do. Measuring only the technical success while ignoring the patient's functional and emotional reality leaves a major knowledge gap that funders and regulators just aren't accepting anymore.
And that dual focus also plays into the economic reality, doesn't it?
It does. Because healthcare finances are always limited, the chapter suggests including a formal cost-benefit analysis in any major area of research to truly assess the value of the proposed intervention, balancing the cost of the procedure with the benefits.
Both the quantifiable benefits, like less time off work, and the qualitative benefits, like improved quality of life.
That's the full picture.
Now we enter the statistical realm, which is often the most feared part of any research project. But it's critical to get it right.
And let's start with what the source calls the sample size crisis.
The source is pretty blunt about this. An incorrect sample size is probably the most frequent reason research is invalid and unpublishable.
It is. Surgical trials are constantly marred by inadequate patient numbers, meaning the results are unreliable and they lack statistical power.
And this failure stems from two types of statistical error, which we can think of using that courtroom metaphor.
Right, where we're determining if the treatment is guilty of having an effect or innocent of having no effect.
Let's start with the type I error, often called alpha.
A type I error is a false positive. In the courtroom, this is like convicting an innocent person.
And in research.
It means you perceive a benefit or difference in your treatment when, in reality, the observed difference happened purely by chance. You wrongly conclude your new intervention is better.
Okay, and the type 2 error, or beta.
That's a false negative. This is like letting a guilty person walk free. In research, you miss a genuine, true benefit that was there to be found because your study simply lacked the statistical power to detect it.
Usually because your sample size was too small.
Almost always. You wrongly conclude your new intervention is no different from the old one, when in fact it was.
So calculating the required number of patients, the sample size calculation, is what allows you to overcome the risk of these errors.
And this is done before the study starts. It ensures that, given a set power and significance level, you have enough patients to detect a specified magnitude of effect.
And it's common practice to set the level of power at 90% with a 5% significance level.
Yes, p 0.05. This means if there is a true difference between the groups, you have a 90% chance of detecting it and only a 5% risk of falsely reporting a difference when none exists.
So let's look at the formula implication. The example scenario looks at detecting a reduction in event rate, like reducing wound infection from 30% down to 20%.
Right. And running those parameters through the formula yields a result of 333 patients needed in each group.
So that's 666 total patients, plus a buffer for people who drop out.
Exactly. And the implication, which ties right back to our discussion on collaboration, is the feasibility crisis. You cannot get 666 patients with that condition in a specific time frame from a single local hospital.
It's impossible.
It's basically impossible. This necessity forces you to expand enrollment immediately into a multi-center study, often involving those research collaboratives we discussed.
And this volume of data collection not only makes the trial possible, but has the added vital benefit of improving the external validity of your findings.
And the generalizability, making it more likely to influence national practice.
The golden rule of statistics is emphasized here, and we can't say it enough.
Consult a statistician before the study begins, not after.
Not after.
Statistics is the most commonly criticized part of clinical papers, and a statistician is cheaper than a failed multi-year trial. Get professional help with design, not just analysis.
Okay, before diving into the test, let's quickly define the basic descriptive statistics.
Sure. The mean is the average, sensitive to outliers. The median is the middle value. This is preferred for non-normal or ranked data because it isn't distorted by extreme outliers.
And the mode is the value with the highest frequency used for nominal data.
And the range is just the largest to the smallest value.
The truly critical decision for analysis, the statistical menu, depends entirely on whether your data is normally distributed or parametric or not non-parametric.
Right. Normal data has that symmetrical bell-shaped curve where the mean, median, and mode are the same.
So if your data is numerical and normally distributed, say comparing average blood pressure between two groups, you use an unpaired t-test.
And if you're comparing the same group at two different time points pre-op and post-op, you use a paired t-test.
But surgical data is often skewed. If the data is numerical but not normally distributed, say tumor size, you must use non-parametric tests.
Which is why the median is often reported instead of the mean for this type of data, as it gives a better central tendency. So for comparing two groups with non-normal numerical data, you use a Mann-Whitney U-test.
And if you are comparing the same group at two time points,
a Wilcoxon-Sign rank test. Using a t-test on non-normal data is a common error that invalidates your results, hence the statistician.
And finally, if your data is categorical, like admitted to ICU or not admitted to ICU,
you can use a chi-squared test to compare two groups.
Okay, finally, interpreting the results. We hear a lot about p-values, but the source notes that confidence intervals are actually the best guide to the true range of difference.
They are. The confidence interval, or CI, gives you a range, typically 95%, within which the true effect of the intervention likely lies.
So if the CI includes 0,
it means the true difference could plausibly be 0, which usually implies a lack of statistical significance. The p-value simply tells you if a difference exists. The CI tells you how big that difference is likely to be, which is clinically much more useful.
And p-values. p.05 implies a true difference. But we can't forget what that actually means.
No. It still indicates a 1 in 20 chance that the difference you observed happened purely by random chance, even if there's no real difference.
That's the cautionary note.
It is. Statistics simply quantify chance. The source reminds us that if statistics are required to demonstrate the differences between two surgical results, it's likely that the observed differences are of low clinical significance. Clinically important differences should jump out.
With the statistics planned, we move to the study protocol, the blueprint. This document defines the entire research plan in exhaustive detail.
And it's the first deliverable for the ethics committee. It has to contain the background, the aims, a clear methodology, population definitions, sample sizes, exclusion criteria, and the precise methods of analysis.
And it must be detailed enough that another party could come along in the future and replicate the study exactly.
It's the recipe book for your research, and the value of a clear flow diagram can't be overstated.
The source points to the Sunrise trial flow diagram as an excellent example.
It's a clear summary of the protocol, which prevents errors in data collection down the line and ensures everyone on the collaborative team follows the same path.
A major goal of good protocol design is eliminating bias, which can invalidate the study.
It can skew the results toward a perceived outcome.
So what are the main methods the protocol uses to prevent this, starting with the blinding spectrum?
Blinding aims to prevent patients, researchers, or data collectors from knowing which treatment was received, thus preventing preconceptions from influencing outcomes.
The most basic is the blinded observer.
Right, where the data recorders don't know which treatment was used. Then there's the single blind, where the patient is unaware of their treatment allocation.
And the ideal, the standard for drug trials, is the double blind.
The double blind is where neither the patient nor the researcher is aware of which therapy has been used until after the study has finished. However, we have to acknowledge that in surgery, full double blinding is often impossible or unethical.
Right, a surgeon can't be blinded to the technique they're performing.
Of course not. So surgical researchers have to rely on partial blinding. If the surgeon knows what they did, you focus on blinding the assessment of the outcome.
So in the Rossini trial, for example, the surgeons knew if they used the wound protector or not.
But the assessor, who came back 3 months later to evaluate the wound infection rate, was blinded to the allocation. You also ensure the outcome measures are as objective as possible, classified by a third party who has no vested interest in the outcome.
Once the protocol is finalized and peer-reviewed, you enter the regulatory maze. This is where the time you reserved for approvals becomes essential.
And a study should never commence without proper approvals. This process often takes months and must be factored into the project timeline.
First is sponsorship.
An institution, company, or organization must take ultimate responsibility for the initiation, management, and financing of the research. This is often the hospital trust or the university.
Next, peer review.
Formal review of the protocol by non-investigators is required before submission to ethics committees or funders. The feedback from this process is invaluable.
Then comes ethics, the gatekeeper.
While common sense is the first guide, independent review is essential to protect patients. In the UK, if the research involves NHS patients, the NHS Research Ethics Committee, or NHS-REC, provides that review.
And this is often accessed via the Integrated Research Application System, or IRS.
That's right. IRS is the unified online system that allows researchers to complete a single application form to gain all the necessary approvals.
A brilliant system.
It simplifies, but does not expedite, the process.
And what are the common reasons ethics committees reject an application? What's the practical advice?
Primarily, it comes down to inadequate patient safety and information. Poor patient information sheets with complex jargon, unclear consent processes, inadequate data management plans.
And the source specifically notes the importance of attending the ethics meeting if you're invited.
Yes. It lets you address concerns on the spot and can save weeks of back-and-forth correspondence.
Regulatory approvals also apply beyond basic ethics.
Yes. Interventional, clinical, or device trials are regulated by bodies like the MHRA in the UK, similar to the FDA. And any trial involving animals requires stringent approval and must adhere to guidelines like the ARRIVE guidelines.
And before the first participant is even recruited.
All clinical trials must be registered on a publicly available database like ISRCTN or clinicaltrials.gov. Journal editors now require this for publication.
It's a check against publication bias and fraud. And finally, we have to touch on research integrity.
The Concordat to support research integrity sets out the core commitments: honesty in data collection and reporting, accountability and transparency, professional courtesy and fairness, and good stewardship of resources. These principles are non-negotiable.
You finished the study, collected and analyzed the data. Now for the crucial final step, dissemination. There's no point conducting a project and leaving the results unreported.
No. And the source is very clear. No project, if properly conducted, is worthless, even if the results are negative.
This is an ethical imperative, especially for negative results.
It is. Underreporting negative outcomes causes a systematic bias in the literature, known as publication bias. It favors trials that show a positive effect and distorts the true picture.
So you have an ethical duty to publish, even if your treatment didn't work.
So others don't waste time repeating your failure.
The first step is choosing the forum. You have to match the message to the audience.
Right. Big, important RCTs or national audits merit presentation at international meetings and publication in high-impact journals.
Smaller observational studies or local audits are often perfect for regional meetings or smaller specialist journals.
Exactly. And when it comes to the written paper itself, convention dictates an inviolable structure, IMRAD.
Introduction, methods, results, and discussion. This structure is universally recognized and must be strictly followed.
It must.
Let's break down the required function of each part. The introduction.
Must be short. Provide a brief background to establish the knowledge gap and clearly outline the specific aims of the trial or audit.
The methods section.
This must be detailed enough for future replication. It describes the study design, identifies potential biases and how they were mitigated, and provides full detail for any new techniques.
The results section is where you present the facts, best shown diagrammatically, using tables and figures.
And a golden rule here. If the result is in a figure or table, it does not need to be duplicated word for word in the main text. Just highlight the main finding and refer the reader to the diagram.
And then the discussion. This is the section that truly tests your critical thinking and writing skills.
It is. And it's crucial not to repeat the introduction or merely reiterate the results. Instead, you have to interpret the results intelligently.
What do they mean in the context of existing literature? What are the limitations? What future studies follow logically from your findings?
That's the core of it.
That's the theory, but what's the biggest mistake people make in that discussion section? Is it overstating findings?
Absolutely. The number one mistake is overextrapolation. If you ran a small single-center trial of 50 patients, you cannot conclude that your technique should become the new national standard.
So the discussion must be proportionate to the power and validity of the study.
A good discussion acknowledges the limitations, sample size, lack of blinding before suggesting future directions.
Primary references.
This section should include all relevant, up-to-date papers and must be presented in the specific citation style of the journal of submission. It's often the small details that get flagged by editors first.
Regarding publication models, traditionally, journals were subscriber-funded. But we're seeing the rise of open access. What's the impact of that?
Well, the author, or their institution, pays a fee, and this model ensures that all research is visible to anyone globally, any student, any clinician in a low-resource setting without a paywall.
So it instantly increases its potential impact.
Which is pushing open access to potentially become the standard model in the future.
Once you're able to publish your own work, you also have to develop the ability to critically analyze the work of others.
And this is where standardized checklists and appraisal tools come in, designed to quickly spot flaws in methodology.
Like the Consolidated Standards of Reporting Trials or Consort Statement.
A crucial tool. It's a checklist developed by scientists and editors to dramatically improve the quality of RCT reporting by ensuring all essential methodological steps are transparently reported.
So reviewing the Consort checklist is the single best way to evaluate a trial's value.
And ensure the authors haven't overlooked obvious biases. Other systems exist too, like the JDAD score for grading trial quality and the PRISMA guidelines for systematic reviews and meta-analyses.
And the unifying goal behind all of this structure and rigor is evidence-based surgery, or EBS.
Right. Surgical practice has historically been considered an art, often leading to huge variability. Ask 50 surgeons how to manage a patient, you might get 50 different answers based on anecdote.
So EBS is the movement to find the best ways of managing patients using the clinical evidence from collected studies.
The work of centers like the Cochrane Collaboration synthesizing evidence through systematic reviews and meta-analyses is crucial to standardizing practice and smoothing out the differences between clinicians.
It ensures we are basing our care not on habit or anecdote,
but on the highest quality evidence available.
What a detailed deep dive. We've covered a massive territory today, moving from that initial non-negotiable decision of audit versus research.
Using the HRA decision tool, yeah.
Through the necessary cyclical structure of the 7-step audit cycle and the incredible leverage offered by trainee collaborative research groups like the WMRC and that Rossini trial.
We stressed the vital importance of sample size calculation, the necessity of avoiding type I and type 2 errors, convicting the innocent and letting the guilty walk free.
And the golden rule of consulting a statistician early. We walk through the practical hurdles of the regulatory maze, emphasizing transparency, correct blinding techniques, and finally, that IMRAD format for publication.
I think the main thing that stands out from this entire chapter is the practical imperative. You have to do this yourself.
That's the core message.
It is. To truly develop the critical appraisal skills you need to critique the literature that crosses your desk, you have to understand the process by performing your own studies.
So, seek out your local surgical research collaborative group, whether you're a medical student or a trainee, and get involved immediately.
Absolutely.
We spent some time discussing the modern focus on patient-reported outcome measures, or PROMs, alongside the hard facts of complication rates, like the Clavian-Dindo system. And this leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over.
We know that financial resources in healthcare are always limited and new surgical procedures are expensive.
Always.
So how might future surgical research ethically balance the objective, measurable outcomes of complication rates, which often correlate with immediate cost, with the subjective, valuable data of patient-reported quality of life, especially when designing cost-benefit analyses for procedures?
That tension between clinical safety and patient function is a growing challenge.
And the future of surgical validation really depends on addressing it transparently.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into surgical audit and research. We'll see you next time.